25 years. And he started his career in April 1991 as management trainee at National Organic Chemical Limited, NOCIL. And then he joined as a project engineer into Forbes Marshall. It's in Pune. Then Thermax Fuji Limited between 97 to 99 as assistant manager. Then Robert Bosch as senior technical manager from 1999 to 2006. Then Mindtree Limited as technical director and head automotive industry group between 2006 to 2011. And then he joined KPIT. Here he served more than 9 years between 2011 to 17 as practice head hybrid and electric vehicles. Then practice director R&D between April 2017 to 2019 March. And then COC head advanced diagnostics, diagnostic data authoring, and system engineering between April 2019 to March 2020. And in April 2020, he has joined HELA. So he is head of advanced engineering and machine learning at HELA. So he's having a vast experience in the area of vehicles associated with the vehicles. And we are fortunate that he has kindly consented to be the part of this FDP, and he will share with his views, his knowledge, his experience to the audience. So I request, sir, please take the dais. Sir, your voice is not audible. No, we are not able to listen to you. Your mic is unmuted, but I don't know why the voice is not there. Participants, are you able to listen? Anyone, please?
No,
No,
sir.
sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
No, sir.
Some problem is there, sir, on your side. Maybe mic is not selected from the system. If you are using your headphone, maybe sometimes you have to select the mic. It takes system sound. So if you just take out your pin, this mic pin, maybe system sound will come. Yes,
Hello,
sir.
is it?
Yeah. Yes, your voice is there. Yeah.
Okay. Is it clear? Then I won't use the headphones.
Yes,
Is it
it is
clear?
clear, sir. It is clear. Only
Okay.
you have to just check the distance because if you go away from the system, then maybe it will create a problem.
Okay. I think let me try with my headphone once again.
Yeah. Just connect it. Maybe it connects
Yeah,
to.
is it working?
Yeah. Now it is working. Yes.
Okay, good. Some small hitch, technical hitch.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks, Professor Sanjeev, for kind introduction. I think it is also a good opportunity for me to interact with so many participants, and as you mentioned, I think most of the participants are faculty members. They themselves teaching at different institutes or all the research scholars.
Yes,
So
yes, sir.
it will be certainly challenge for me to engage them. I don't know how far I will add to their knowledge, but yes, I will try to share what I have gained over these years and also give a perspective about the battery management system in automotive. So I think I will start sharing my slides if let me just give
Sure,
a
sir.
second. Just let me know if you are able to see my screen.
Yeah, it is visible.
Okay, good. So I would, I think during next 1.5 hours in our interaction, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hands, and I will try to answer them. And so these are the 4 topics which I would like to cover today. So I will start with an introduction to HELA. I think this will set a context about this topic. Then the next topic I would cover is on the BMS evolution. We will talk about energy management, what are the key drivers for the battery management system. Then we will look into the battery chemistries and its impact on the BMS. And then the last and of course the most important topic is to go a little more detail into the BMS. And then of course we will have time to share some questions, and we can interact. So I would prefer to have an interactive session, because conducting session remotely is always not that easy. And so I would please ask your questions, and then so I can get some feedback from you.
Sure, sir.
Okay, so, yeah. So to start with, let me give you a quick background about Hella. Hella is a global automotive tier 1 company. It is, I would say, more than 120 years old company, and one of the well-known brands within automotive, and particularly in Germany. So, Hella is market listed, although not in India, but outside India. It is a family-owned company with more than 125 locations across 35 countries. In terms of revenue, we are around 6 billion euros from the last financial year. So we have around 40,000 employees, I would say, worldwide. Within India, we have around 1,500 engineers here. Hella also has a lot of focus on the research. So we spend quite some amount of our revenue onto a research. Then Hella also has very good interaction with the academic institutions. I will come to it more in detail later. And in terms of business portfolio, there are 3 segments. So within the automotive. So automotive main sensors, actuators. Then we are into aftermarket, and then there are special applications where we are working. Now coming to the in terms of product segments, we have automotive lighting and automotive electronics. These are the 2 main portions, almost 50% share. Then we have an aftermarket segment and a special application segment. So as you see, Hella is known for automotive lighting. We have very innovative products in the lighting segment. And in the automotive electronics, energy management and automated driving are, I would say, the 2 focus areas for us. And when it comes to aftermarket, we have our aftermarket diagnostic sensor, diagnostic scanners for the automotive. And we also have several workshop equipments that we deal with. And then there are certain special applications like UC lighting technology for marine application. And then there are few other areas there. So this just gives you a quick overview about the Hella milestones since it started in 1899 till today. So we have several important milestones all through our journey. And today Hella has a 12% global market share in the lighting, and it is among the top 2 companies in Europe. Then we also have really leading market position with regard to several electronic products. We will come to that a little later. And we also are one of the largest trade organizations for spare parts in Europe. So that's a quick overview about Hella. I think this is important. This is will give you a little broader perspective about what we are working on. As you can see that there are 3 main focus areas for Hella. First is the efficiency and electrification. Then we have autonomous driving and connectivity and digitalization. I think these are the primary focus areas for our electronics business. So if you look into electrification, you can see we have battery sensors, we have BMS, we have dual voltage battery management, then we have motor position sensors, then thermal management, we have sensors and actuators, and of course we have voltage converters. I am sure, I think during your last 3-4 days of your workshop, you would have covered, I think, most of these topics already. And when it comes to autonomous driving, we have 24 gigahertz radar, 77 gigahertz radar. Then we have some time back, we have launched a shake sensor. Then we also have the camera software division and the electronic power steering. So these are the main products within the autonomous driving. And when it comes to connectivity, we have several solutions like for passive access system, and now we have recently launched a smart access system for the vehicles. So that is on the connectivity and digitalization. And then we have lot many sensors, actuators in our portfolio, which comes under the basic mobility. So for example, in India, if you look at all the major OEMs, they use HELA accelerator pedal sensor. Then we have other products like vacuum pumps, rain light sensors. Then we have position sensors. There are several other actuators within the HELA portfolio. Okay. Now coming to give you a little more perspective on the electrification, which is our topic for discussion today. This is a summary. It gives a summary about what HELA thinks about the electrification. So you know that today the electrification is mainly driven by the regulatory emission requirements, and as well as it is driven by the improved technology maturity and affordability. Then in terms of the hybrids, you see mild hybrids is a bridging technology, and HELA pursues that to be a big growth opportunity in coming years. So if you see if you see the journey, I mean, we are currently mainly the internal combustion engines, and the penetrations of hybrid and full hybrid, mild hybrid, and EV, particularly in India, are very less. But we see that there is a big potential going ahead for a mild hybrid, and there are several vehicles which are already there in the Indian market, which are into the mild hybrid category. So the mild hybrid is really a strongest growth area in terms of electrification. So now coming to from the HELA product perspective, as I told you, we have a lot of products into the power and battery electronics. Like we have voltage converters. So these are really our flagship product, and we are supplying it to many OEMs across the world, and the different types of the voltage converters. Then intelligent battery sensor, I think we talk about it little more detail later. This is again a very important product for HELA, and we are really, I would say, almost number one in the world supplying this technology. Then when it comes to the battery management system, there are low voltage battery management and of course high voltage battery management systems. And then there are fuel control modules. So this is in terms of the electrification. So what we think is the future. So that is currently we are working on our third generation of 48-volt converters. And also we are into our 6th generation for our IBS product. Then we have launched our 2nd generation for high voltage BMS, which is just getting into production now. Then we have recently also introduced a very innovative solution for dual voltage battery management system. This is specifically targeting the mild hybrid applications. And in addition to that, we have solutions for mild hybrid and electric vehicles and we have partnership with different lead customers for power pack development, 48-volt power pack, then onboard chargers and all those areas. Yeah. So we clearly see that there is a very good opportunity for growth in this area, and electrification is certainly a major focus for HELA. Now coming to, I told you that HELA is very actively involved with academic institutions, and I thought since all of you are associated with different institutions, and we are talking about how this industry and institution interaction can really enhance. And I personally have been involved in these activities quite closely. We have actually set up a Frugal Innovation Lab at the Government Engineering College in Pune. So this facility is almost ready, and we will be inaugurating it very soon. Then we are also running a very interesting internship program for the MTech students. So this is our 4th year now, and we have every year we would have a batch of 15-20 students which would join HELA under this program, and they do 1 year internship with us. And then also we do a teaching engagement during this part. So we have our employees who are also faculty members at the institution. And we have also recently started in India a PhD program, a sponsored PhD program, and we have our first student who is now working with us under this program. So we strongly believe that this is very important aspect, I think, and we certainly support it in all ways. Okay, so good. I think I will move on to the next topic. If you have any questions so far, please let me know. Otherwise, I will just move on to the next topic.
Yes, sir. Please proceed to the second one.
Yeah. So this is about, I wanted to give a complete perspective when it comes to battery management. I think it is important to understand what are the motivations for BMS, how it has evolved, and what are the key drivers. So as you know, I mean, you will have definitely discussed it during your during this whole program, that energy management is a very key aspect. And I think energy management in the vehicles is really driving a lot of innovation within the vehicles. So when you say of energy, like we talk about emissions, because they go hand in hand. So the focus on reducing the CO2 emissions have led to a lot of innovations within the vehicles. So for example, there are trends for engine downsizing. Then you have like better fuel management. Then we have hybrid and EV, and then there is a regeneration topic, which is again very vital. And now with the mild hybrid system, we have start-stop. Now this is very common in India also. Now we have many vehicles which have a start-stop function. And then this trend of innovation continues with the mild hybrid and then the EV. So these are, I would say, these are the main drivers for bringing a lot of innovation in the energy management. And on the right side, you see there are different sensors than what you need for enabling this better energy management. And the simplest one to start with is the IBS, Intelligent Battery Sensor. And then of course comes the BMS, and then DC to DC converter, and yeah, and then charging infrastructure. So these are the key drivers. Then if you look into the vehicle electric architecture, I think this is again a very important aspect one needs to consider when we talk about the battery management system. So you know, currently our vehicles have a 12-volt system. So we have a lead acid battery, and this battery is primarily used for cranking, and that's all. I mean, the real use of the battery is limited to starting and maybe some electrical loads, lighting and other small loads. But now the trend is that the first trend, I mean, this is in the sequence. The first trend is now to like some of the OEMs are planning to introduce a lithium-ion 12-volt battery system. Now this brings some advantages to over the existing system in terms of weight, in terms of reliability, in terms of battery life, and better energy density. So you have some advantages in terms of packaging, in terms of weight and overall system reliability. So now the next change in the electrical architecture which is coming up is a dual hold system. So you have a 48 volt battery pack, and this pack you can either make it 12 volt or you can make it 48 volt. And there are certain system related reasons when you will make this changeover. So in this these systems of course are new. They may or may not come into Indian market because of course Indian market is very cost sensitive, and as you would have seen, we have many times we have jumped the technology path. So we may or may not have this system coming into India, but certainly in the other markets in the world, this dual voltage system is now picking up. And in this, as I mentioned, there are two configurations. One is that you have a battery pack which you can configure for 48 volt or 12 volt, or you have a 48 volt and DC to DC converter. So there are these two configurations within this. So next evolution of the architecture is the 48 volt system. I mean, those of you who are closely tracking the automotive segment, you will realize that there has been this 48 volt discussion for quite some time in the automotive world. There are lot many advantages certainly going in for a 48 volt system, but also it is not easy to make a changeover, right? It involves a lot of cost. But I think there is certainly this mild hybrid segment is really picking up quite fast, and you will see in India, it might come also in India at a later stage. But in the European market, yes, 48 volt system is really now getting into series production. Now, when it comes to 48 volt system, there are several advantages, right, over the current 12 volt system. You can support lot many functions. Then it leads to also improvement in the emission norms, because you have a better better control on different things, and plus you have a flexibility to use your 48 volt system in certain operating ranges. And then comes the high voltage system, which is really the EV segment, where you can have 400 to 800 volt system, and this is for a full electric vehicles. So now all of this has certainly an impact on how battery management system has evolved or evolving now in this segment. So I guess you are clear with these different vehicle electrical architectures, which are, I think, very vital in our discussion.
There is one query I had seen in Indian system.
Yes.
Some of the manufacturers, maybe the Tata has launched a 72 volt system for its EV model.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So you are right. I think there are some vehicles with the lower voltage also.
Yeah. And this Mahindra, all Mahindra models are with 48 volt system.
But those are only mild hybrid.
Yeah, mild, no, they call it all electric. Yeah, but what we feel from academic point of view, if you are going for very low voltage, then current becomes very high, and it's really making a machine. It will be a difficult task.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
What is your opinion? Should it be very high? Means going to 400 volt, there may be some safety issues also.
Yeah, correct. So yes, correct. So when it comes to the safety, 60 volts and above is considered as high voltage. And then high voltage put a lot of design constraints on the vehicle, because then they become hazardous to the driver. So you have to take
Yes.
several precautions, and then the cost increases quite a lot if you go for a really high voltage. So
Okay.
I think there are experiments happening. I mean, there are some vehicle launch which are less with a less voltage. But as you rightly pointed out, there are other challenges there in terms of the current and other considerations.
Yes.
And mainly this low voltage. I mean, so-called low voltage within the high voltage segment or the EV segment, they will be for a very specific applications and not really into the main. Uh, Passenger segment.
Okay, so the buses, maybe I'm just going out of the way.
Yeah.
KPIT, the KPIT was using buses. So
Yes.
what was the voltage level there in those buses?
It was again high voltage. It was
Okay,
400 or something. And yes, it was 300 plus, but high voltage system. Yes.
okay. So it is only in mild segment or mild hybrids only will go for the 48
Correct.
volt.
Low. Correct.
Yeah,
Correct. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Please, sir. Please proceed.
Okay, so there are some more aspects, I think, from a battery perspective. So we have seen from a vehicle architecture perspective, there are those four architectures which are in use. And now coming to the battery as such. So there are certain factors which are uh, from the battery management which we have to consider. So first is the battery cost. So if you see today, we have a lead acid battery, and the cost of the lead acid battery is really negligible, right, compared to a vehicle cost. But then when it comes to a lithium ion, when we want to go to other systems, then lithium ion suddenly becomes a very expensive proposition. And of course, this percentage will vary based on whether it is we are going only for a mild hybrid or an EV. But when it comes to EV, then it becomes suddenly very high, right? It becomes maybe 50% or sometimes even more in terms of the vehicle cost. So so when we think about battery management, I think battery cost is a factor which you have to keep in mind, because then we will see how battery management impacts these aspects. Then when it comes to battery life, but today we have lead acid batteries. We replace it with every 3 years usually, right? And but when we talk about now next generation, when we talk about lithium ion, then we are already talking about a lifetime warranty for the battery, because it is very expensive, and then there are technologies which are evolving, and certainly the aim is to have a lifetime battery. So you fit it once into vehicle and you don't have to really look at it again. Then the third important aspect is driving comfort and convenience. So if you see in terms of lead acid batteries, it is primarily used for cranking the vehicle. Then there is some lighting things, but you don't talk about really a driving comfort or convenience, right? It happens. It happened to me. It happens, I think, with everyone, that the battery will go off suddenly. It will fail, right? It will get completely discharged, or you will not be able to use it again. And it happens all of a sudden because there is no monitoring as such in the current vehicles. But when it comes to lithium ion, then the expectations are far different, because then lithium ion will support lot many features within the vehicle. There are a lot of ADAS features. There are a lot of comfort features. So this will happen once we switch over the battery technology, and also, of course, we have to switch over to the electrical network within the vehicle. And the fourth aspect is safety and reliability. This is again very different. Lead acid safety is not an issue, right? We hardly talk about safety when it comes to lead acid battery. Of course, we certainly talk about the environmental impact and some different kinds of environmental pollution and all that for lead acid, but safety was never an issue. But when it comes to the next generation batteries, lithium ion batteries, then safety is a major consideration. So, so all these four things are really vital when you talk about any battery management system. Yeah. So, any thoughts or anything anyone has any questions?
I think no question, sir. Please
Okay,
proceed.
great. Okay, so now let's talk about battery chemistries and its impact on the BMS. So, I mean, there has been a lot of discussions on different battery chemistries, and we will. I think this is an interesting slide. I have just I had to give you a quick overview. So, you know, I mean, if you talk about lead acid, then of course lead acid has a much lower power density, then life is much less. You see the cycle life is 200, 300, and that's how we replace it every 2-3 years. Then its charging time is also quite high, significantly high. But at the same time, the lead acid battery is, I would say, quite tolerant in terms of the overcharging. Then you have a self-discharge is not really that big an issue. It is with the lead acid batteries. Then the cell voltage, yeah, it is around 2 volts for the lead acid battery. Then you think of the peak load current, what is there. So you can take 5C, up to 5C. Then the charge temperature. Again, the batteries are very stable, operate from -20 to 50 degrees. Same thing is for discharge. And the maintenance requirement, maybe now there are maintenance free batteries, so you may not need that. And it is quite thermally stable. So these are, and they have been used for ages there. Then came the nickel cadmium, nickel metal hydride. I think these were not so popular and were not used in the automotive much. But then we come to lithium ion. But then now the scenario changes completely. You have much higher specific energy density. You have cycle life has become quite high. So we talk about easily 2000 plus cycles when we talk about the lithium ion. Then the charging time, yes, the lithium ion, I think that is one of the main advantage when talk about lithium ion, that it can really absorb charge much faster. And so you have a, if you have a fast charger, then yes, it has a potential to get charged within an hour or less. But then you have the big challenge comes in terms of the charging, discharging, right? The tolerance of the battery chemistry. And now this changes between the, I mean, within lithium ion, there are several chemistries which are currently being used, and they have a different tolerances. But overall, you need to really take care of the overcharge of the battery. Cell voltage, yes, it is, there is not much variation. So I don't see that really impacts a lot of electronics or any other thing there. Then the charge cutoff voltage, yes, here again you need to be very careful when it comes to lithium ion battery. And again, you see there is a variation between the chemistries within the lithium ion. So the peak load current, I think this is where the lithium ion has a lot of advantage, because you can go up to 20-30 C. So both for charging and also for during discharge. So they can really support high load variation there. Now in terms of temperature, I think again this is a very important aspect for lithium ion, because you have to be really well within the operating range, and so which is 0 to 45 degrees usually. Then from maintenance perspective, these are really maintenance free, but you of course need a good battery management system to reach that stage. Safety. Now safety becomes a very, very critical aspect. I think all of us remember the incident that A320, if I remember correctly, which had this lithium ion battery catching fire on the flight, and you know what happened after that. So safety is I think the most important factor when we talk about lithium ion as a battery. And lithium ion, of course, are not really new, but it took time for them to really get developed. But we are now really in a very interesting phase where lithium ion is becoming quite prevalent within the automotive. So I mean, when you talk about the now, just to give you a perspective, there are two popular chemistries in lithium ion which are used in the automotive. One is NMC, and then you have a LFP. And and then there is a new chemistry which is being discussed worldwide and also in India, is a lithium sulfur. And I guess some of you might also be involved in this, because there is a network within the academic circles within India who is now working on the lithium sulfur battery development. So, I think here, to summarize, the battery chemistry certainly has lot of impact on any battery management solution, and we will talk about it in more details later. Now, impact of battery chemistry. These are the other aspects which are impacting. So, if you see temperature and voltage measurement, so if the battery chemistry changes, then the temperature model which is used within the BMS also has to be updated, because within a battery pack, usually a battery pack will have. So, if you take a 48-volt battery pack, you have 16 into 3 modules. So there are many cells. What I mean to say, within a small battery pack also. And so temperature and voltage measurement and then temperature management becomes a challenge, and that varies from chemistry to chemistry also. Then when we talk about battery packaging, now this you must be wondering how battery packaging is influenced by a battery chemistry. So there are certain chemistries where there is a battery expansion that happens during charging and discharging. So there is the expansion and contraction which happens within the battery cell. And now if you are packaging several hundred cells within the battery pack, you can see the real challenges from a mechanical perspective that the battery packaging would have. So this property will vary, or it varies based on the battery chemistry. Then battery cooling requirements. Now these again have a lot of influence on based on the battery chemistry. Now charging and discharging. Now this is a very I would say a very critical aspect for lithium ion, and there is still a lot of opportunities to improve both of these aspects. And then again, these two charging discharging aspects are also very much dependent on the battery chemistry. And then the battery charge and life prediction and safety. Now this again is very chemistry dependent. There is a variation in the battery characteristics. Then the safety consideration also vary from chemistry to chemistry, and so this again becomes an important aspect when we talk about a BMS. So now I just wanted to give you a quick overview about the battery characteristics. I think this is a biggest pain currently in the BMS development, because every battery chemistry has a different characteristics, and that has different advantages and disadvantages. So if you see NMC battery, it has within the operating range of an SOC, it is fairly linear characteristic. So from a state of charge and state of health perspective, NMCs are easier to handle. But when it comes to LFP batteries, they have certain advantages over NMC, but then they have a flat characteristic in the operating range, and that makes it again very difficult for the SOC and other algorithms perspective. And the third example is of a lithium sulfur, which has its own challenges. So the charging and discharging cycle, there is a different, there is a what you call the whole path is different for battery charging and discharging. So this poses a different problem in terms of the battery management system. So different battery chemistries need different approaches, and this is the main reason why even today everyone is really struggling with the having a right battery management solution, because it is that much difficult to really have a good BMS. And this, what you see are the characteristics at with only one charge rate and with one temperature. And now you can see, if I put together different operating temperature ranges, if you take India, then it has still higher variation in the temperature, right, from low to high. And the whole your operating curve of battery changes because of the temperature. And then the next influencing factor is the charge discharge rate, how battery is getting used. So there are so many parameters which are varying that makes the BMS really very complicated, I would say, from a yeah. So I think with this I move on to the most important topic for today, on the BMS. So I will talk about what are the key algorithms and what are the different BMS solutions which are currently being used in the industry. So I think so far we have seen that how the electrical vehicle architecture, then the battery chemistry, and the different user requirements, they are going to influence your BMS solution. So now let's go into the BMS key algorithms. So I think we won't go into not many details. Probably you are already, many of you might already be working on that or doing a research, but I think it is important to understand the complexity in estimating the state of charge. The state of charge is like a fuel gauge, right, for an electric vehicle. And I mean, in automotive, the requirements are very stringent, because you cannot afford to have a SOC which is very wrong, because that will impact your confidence of your user. And you cannot afford that you drive a vehicle and suddenly your battery is out of charge. So that is just not allowed. So when we talk about SOC, there are certain key things. I mean, the SOC is by definition, it is a ratio of your charge. The current charge to the full charge of the battery. So for a new battery, you start with an SOC of 100%, and then as you start using it, the charge will drop to a 0%. And that is of course you won't go to there, and that's what there is a certain operating range for the SOC. So this and then for a electrical vehicle perspective, you will never have a battery which is 100% SOC, because you always want to have some buffer for regeneration. So battery should be in a position to accept the charge when there is an opportunity for regeneration. And similarly, you won't go below certain SOC, because that affects the battery life to a large extent. So there is in between, there is an operating range for your state of charge. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the state of charge is influenced by several factors, and that's what makes it complicated. So now let's look at what are the typical factors for state of charge. So the first most important is, of course, what is your health of the battery, right? So because as the battery degrades over a period of time, its capacity for charging, for holding a charge, reduces, and also its capacity to discharge also gets reduced. So the state of health is a very important part for your accuracy of the your state of charge. Then the second very important, and I think that's where the electronics really comes into picture, and the solutions like what we are providing, for example, from HELA comes into picture, because you need to measure the voltage and current very, very accurately and also synchronously. So this is very challenging. For steady state, it is very easy. It is that you will synchronously sample your voltage and current. But the automotive application is, and particularly if you go into a EV application, then the voltage and current are very, very dynamic, and that makes it very difficult to sample them synchronously and also sample them very accurately, because both of them will have an impact on your SOC estimation. And we will look into the different typical algorithms what are used in the SOC. But you will see that this is the, I would say, the most researched area, state of charge and state of health, and also it is most complicated area. So you take any vehicle, even in the Indian market currently, which has the BMS, the SOC accuracy will be still in the range of 8, 9, 10%. It is that difficult to estimate a correct state of charge. So in terms of algorithm, the most commonly used algorithm today are based on the Coulomb counting. So this is the simplest algorithm, that you just based on the current and voltage, you keep on estimating your state of current, state of charge. But of course, this depends on how accurately you know what is the state of charge at the start of your cycle. And that is where the real challenge lies, because any battery, if it is a new battery, yes, that's fine. You know that SOC is 100% when the battery is fully charged. But as the battery keeps on degrading, the starting value for SOC is always not known accurately. So then we have OCV, SOC versus OCV, open circuit voltage versus SOV. So every battery, the battery manufacturer will provide a characteristics of SOV versus the OCV versus SOC curve. But then this needs, when you measure an open circuit voltage, the battery has to be rested for a certain amount of time. Then only your battery voltage is really accurate, and you can use this characteristics. And this is real challenge, because during normal operating conditions, you will not get an opportunity really to rest the battery and then correct your algorithm. And then the third most widely used is the Kalman filter based on the battery model. So as you can see that all these three algorithms, they have their own advantage, disadvantages. So usually you will not have a SOC algorithm which uses either of them. It uses probably all of them together. So you use a Coulomb counting, and then you use OCV curve to actually correct your algorithm periodically. Like you can monitor your battery for the rest. Maybe overnight when you start next day, you will calculate what is the open circuit voltage and then use it to correct your algorithm. So that's how you use a combination of these three methods, which are currently these are the most commonly used algorithms. But then there are now new algorithms which are coming up, and I think those algorithms are based on AI. For example, we are also working on developing an AI-based state of charge estimation and state of health estimation. Now these algorithms are, they need a lot of data. So unless you have a lot of battery data, you won't be able to really build those AI-based algorithms. So that is the biggest challenge for them. And but the industry is now going in a way where your battery will have an connectivity. So it will be a cloud connected battery pack maybe. And once you have that, then I think the other algorithms which are data driven will really become very important. And as I told you that the state of charge estimation really needs a very good state of health estimation also. So since they are very closely interrelated. And now for doing a state of charge and state of health, the very important aspect is about the battery characterization. And that's why you see like organizations like ARAI or ICAT, and there are a couple of other organizations in the country which provides now the facility to do a battery characterization. And when we talk about battery characterization, I think we have done it and I have experienced it. It is very, very complicated and very time consuming, very expensive, because you need to really get the battery data at all temperature ranges within the operating range. Then you have to also age the battery. So because the battery behavior changes at the different state of health condition. So there are so many influencing factors, and that is where the battery characterization becomes very complicated task. And also, okay, so if there are any questions on the state of charge, or maybe any one of you are working and will like to share your experience of developing such an algorithm.
Any participant? Actually, sir, we are also facing the similar kind of problem. Because some of the control schemes, when we talk about the control schemes in laboratories, those control schemes are based on the SOC estimation.
Correct. Yeah.
And what we do, we are going by the first method, that is integral of ampere hour.
Correct.
And usually that method does not give actually the real value.
No. Yeah, correct. It will deviate.
Yeah, it deviates, and sometimes it's a very difficult to get the initial position of the charge.
Correct. Yes.
So suppose we are starting any experiment after say 10 days, and the battery was kept idle. Maybe it has discharged to the value. So how to get the first value of that state of charge?
Yeah.
So how to gauge that? There is no measurement method, and we are also struggling for that kind of thing.
Correct. So this is, as I told you, these are really the biggest challenge what is there currently. And then what we have implemented in our customer projects. So it is basically a combination of different things. It is a combination of using OCV method, using a Kalman filter, doing a battery modeling, and then estimating like internal resistance of the battery, internal capacitance of the battery. So you actually parameterize the battery and create a model. So
yeah, and you have to introduce the aging effect also in that.
Correct. And then over and above, this will vary from chemistry to chemistry.
Yes.
And to add to it, what I have seen is that the cells, the same cells may have little different characteristic, because there are tolerances during manufacturing, and how you have kept the batteries, how you have stored them, and so there are so many factors which are influencing. And if you see the entire the rest of the control for the EV all depends on the SOC, right? If you have a very good SOC, then you have a lot more flexibility in your other control algorithms within the powertrain.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, so, sir, correct. As you told that we can model this battery using SOC and all the parameters, internal parameters of the battery. So, what about? I'm very concerned about depth of discharge of the battery, like DOD. So here we are not going to consider this DOD for modeling of the battery.
Yes, we do consider that. Yeah.
So how we consider, because everybody is talking about SOC, that state of charge of the battery, but whenever suppose there is any kind of fault or there is means machine which we are having like BLDC or some other machines,
Yes.
So if
Yes.
there is any failure or there is any kind of fault toward the motor side, so it will draw a very heavy current. So
Yes.
when we are going to model this battery, so there is any kind of consideration of this DOD, or what is your view in that particular thing?
Yes, so DOD, as far as I know, DOD is also considered when we do this modeling.
Okay,
Yeah.
and my other concern is that when we are having like nowadays this e-rickshaw is very popular. Solar power
Yes.
e-rickshaw is very popular. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
suppose we are having this 3 HP or 5 HP machine, and accordingly we are going to model, means e-rickshaw. For e-rickshaw it is very low rating machine. But
Yes.
suppose we are having this 3 HP or 5 HP machine, and then we are going to design this solar PV array or solar panel. Then in that case, how we have to design the battery? It will be designed according to solar power, or it will be designed according to the battery rating, or how we will decide basically the rating of the battery?
So Shailendra, no, I don't have much of experience in designing that way for the battery pack per se.
Okay, sir, no issue,
So,
no issue. Yeah.
okay, so we continue. Okay, let me. Okay, now coming to the state of health. So this is again another complicated algorithm to really estimate what is the state of health. So this again gets influenced by many parameters. Batteries, like for example, battery usage profile. So usually in the BMS, we keep track of how the battery is being used so far. So what are the number of cycles? Then you have to also store the both charging and discharging uh, details within the BMS to really accurately estimate the state of health. And now there is the battery storage conditions also matters for the SOH, and then the battery chemistry. So so there are many, again here there are many factors which are getting influenced. I mean, which influence the state of health of the battery. And so now there is a lot of work going on in using the AI based algorithm for SOH estimation, because this is again not that easy for estimation. Okay, so coming to the third important aspect is about the cell balancing, and this is again a very important thing, important aspect when you talk about any BMS. I think you know about the cell balancing. I mean, there are two methods. They call it active balancing, or we have a passive balancing. So now in case of an just for a concept perspective, in active balance we don't want to waste the energy, and it is transferred from one cell to other. While in case of passive balancing, you will simply burn out the energy, excess energy, into a resistive load, and that's all how you will balance the cells. So now if you see, the active balancing has challenges in terms of the electronics, because then electronics, the hardware becomes a challenge, right? Because there are so many cells, and how do you really transfer from one cell to other? And we are talking about few hundred cells in a battery pack. So it is really challenging from the hardware perspective, and that's the reason it is not used. I mean, I have not seen the real application with active balancing. Now, when it comes to passive balancing, yes, this is the most commonly used method in the industry, that you will just let the energy go into a resistive load and you burn it out, and that's how you will balance the cell. So this, but then we need to also, I mean, just for your understanding, I think the cell balancing has improved now in a way, because your manufacturing processes have improved significantly. So if your manufacturing tolerances are lower, then the cell balancing challenges are also less, because then the cells have almost same characteristics. But still there are small variations, and over a period of time then the individual cells, they start to deviate, and that's where you have to do cell balancing. And if the main purpose of cell balancing is just is to utilize your battery pack to fullest extent. If there are imbalanced cells, naturally when you charge or discharge, either it will you will not be able to discharge it fully, because then you got a limitation from some cell which has already got discharged, and you will discharge it further, and that is a problem with the cell life. And when you charge also, it is the same thing, that you will reach your limit, and then you will not be able to charge your battery pack to a full extent. So now in terms of algorithms, if you talk about cell balancing, then there are SOC based algorithm, there are model based algorithm, and then there are voltage based algorithm. Again, the most prevalent currently is the voltage based cell balancing, and also the passive way of balancing the cell.
Sir, I have a query in this case.
Yeah.
For cell balancing, if you are saying that, because I'm not aware of this phenomena, is we have some kind of individual terminals available across the battery for the cells? Because suppose one is overcharged, then can we get discharge individually a cell? We need to access the terminals.
Correct. So I mean, yes, so each and I mean, it depends on the battery pack configuration and the OEM requirements and cost constraint and many other things.
Yeah, because cost will increase if all terminals are accessible.
But they are accessible, and we monitor the voltage of all the cells. Yes.
Okay.
So I think I will show you a diagram which will make it clear. But
sure.
There is monitoring of all the cells.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so now let's move on to, I mean, these were the key algorithm. I have not covered the safety algorithms because there are actually safety algorithms becomes very critical once you go into an EV application or other high voltage application for BMS. Then there are really several algorithms that one needs to consider from a safety perspective. But I have not really covered them. So we can move on to now the three types of solutions what are there. So the first one is the IBS. So this is the intelligent battery sensor. So as I told you earlier that this is one of the flagship product from Hela. And so although the product looks, it is very small unit, it mounts directly on the battery. Now there are two variations here. One which you can mount on a positive end of the battery terminal, and the other which is on the negative terminal. So what we have here is a negative terminal mounted IBS. And now here the key technology is really the voltage and current sensing. Very accurate sensing of voltage and current. And what we have in this product is also that the state of charge, state of health, and state of function. These algorithms are inbuilt on this sensor itself. So you don't need them to be on the ECU. So sensor calculates all these things, and then you have a lean communication channel to actually connect it to the ECU. So here there are different solutions. I mean, for 12 volt and 24 volt, the lean is the most common because the cost also is very important, and you don't have that much of data, so that you will need a CAN connection. So lean is the most common and most popular way of connecting this sensor to your ECU. And this of course supports all the battery chemistries, so you can parameterize it based on your battery chemistry. But it is interesting to see that I mean this IBS is in use on Indian vehicles also. So we have customers also in India who are using our IBS solution for their standard lead acid 12-volt battery pack. So this is so we have to look into what are the advantages. So the first is that the systems which are coming with, they call it as a micro hybrid, where you have a start-stop application. So for such application, having an IBS is must, right? Because you always need to predict whether the next restart will be possible or not possible, right? And the IBS will then tell the ECU whether the start-stop functionality has to be enabled or disabled during a driving cycle. So this is the first application. The second application is smart alternator control. So what happens is that I mean, and this is true for a lead acid battery also, that you can because you have no control on the alternator otherwise, an alternator will generate based on the engine RPM, it will generate sometimes much higher voltage, and then the battery is fully charged, and it is then harmful for the battery, because there is no, the battery cannot absorb any charge further and it gets heated. So from a battery life, enhancing the battery life and reliability, the smart alternator control can be enabled if you have an IBS, because then you will know the what is the state of charge of the battery, and then you can control whether the alternator really needs to charge the battery, or it can I mean, it can prevent it from charging. Then the third thing, which feature which you can include with IBS is the quiescent current monitoring. So many times you know that if the battery will start draining, there may be some issue with your other electronics in the vehicle, and then it will drain the battery, and it happens, as I think all of us have experienced that. So IBS then will also monitor that. And it has a very good accuracy to monitor even a small amount of current in few milliamperes, and then report it to the ECU. And then the fourth thing, what advantage you get is about the battery aging. So with IBS you can certainly monitor the state of health for the battery, and it can at least give an alarm to the end user whether the battery pack is healthy or it needs to be replaced. And this is very important from an Indian context. I think we have many issues in these areas. So Indian OEMs are now really shifting and having the IBS into their vehicles. So if you talk about the software going into this IBS, as I told you, the state of charge, here the algorithms will not be that complicated as we have in a full-fledged BMS, because you have a limited computation capability, and you have to maintain your cost and the requirements are also not that stringent. So so you calculate state of charge based on open circuit voltage and AH balancing, and then you have a state of health. So for state of health, what they do is that they maintain a history of charge discharge, and that is many times sufficient, that you have a history of last say 100 cycles, and then you can predict what is the health of the battery. Because I mean, this is entirely based on the charge discharge cycles in case of this solution. And the state of function is as I explained earlier, that you monitor your internal resistance of the battery, because then it will tell you whether you can restart your vehicle, because usually when you crank the vehicle there will be a voltage drop in the battery, and whether the battery is capable of handling that much of drop, you can figure it out. So you will always know how many crank cycles you can do with this estimation. So I think that is all about IBS. So So here I would say software certainly is an important aspect, but the hardware sensing is the key thing. And I think that's what is the also the USP when it comes to the HELA IBS solution.
Sir, this HELA IBS solution, can we use in laboratory environment? And how much it will cost for us?
Oh, you can definitely use it. I think we can discuss if you are interested.
Okay, sure, sir. Sure.
Yeah,
sure, sir.
Okay, so now we move on to the standard BMS, I would say. So here it is a 48 volt BMS or even high voltage BMS. So all of these solutions usually have this kind of an architecture. So you have cell modules within a battery pack. Battery pack will have cell module, and within a cell module you will have a certain combination of series and parallel cells. Now for each of these modules you will have a cell monitoring unit. And sir, as you were asking me about whether you monitor each and every cell in the pack, so that is this is the job done by a cell monitoring unit. So so you will have a cell monitoring unit which will monitor all the cells within the pack. And then all of these cell monitoring units are in either into a daisy chain or some mechanism to share the data with the main battery management unit. So this is usually, I mean, this is a distributed architecture for the BMS, and this is the most common because usually having a centralized architecture where you have only one cell monitoring unit and one BMU, it is very difficult because there are so many cells to be monitored. So as the battery pack grows in size, and you have to go into this kind of an architecture, a distributed BMS architecture. And then you have the battery management unit, which has the algorithms which are working, which are getting executed there. And then we have a switching unit and high voltage current sensing module. So these are the usual components of a typical BMS. So this, I think, just to give you a little more insight. So you will have a battery. You will measure voltage, temperature are the most commonly used parameters. And then usually in a battery pack, it is see I mean, what you need is really an internal temperature of the battery, but that is usually not possible. You can't access it. So you measure the external temperature and then you interpolate the temperature inside the cell within the battery pack. And also in the battery pack, normally you will not have temperature sensor for every cell. It is usually distributed. The sensor mounting is usually distributed within the battery pack, so that you get an average temperature, and then you have a temperature model which will tell you what is the cell temperature. So that's how the temperature monitoring happens. Then of course you have a current sensing, what you need, and many a times the current sensing can be there on both the positive and negative terminal, so that you can see if there is a leakage current and if there are any other deviation. And then the middle portion, which is power board, this is where you do a pre-charge control. And now you know that during the switch on, the battery or the load will draw huge currents, and to prevent that, then you have a pre-charge control for the BMS. So this is a usual, I mean, the standard architecture for a BMS. So I'm saying this specifically, this is low voltage BMS because high voltage then has a lot more complexity. It has a lot more sensors which we need, a lot more monitoring from a safety perspective. So it becomes quite complicated. So if you look into a BMS for a 400 volt application, I think it will be far more complicated in terms of sensing and also monitoring. So this is a usual, say, a 48 volt battery pack. So you will have 6 parallel modules. So these modules will all depend on what current you want to really draw. So your higher current AH rating will mean it means more modules, and then you have the cells in the series, 16 cells in series. So that gives you around 48 volt. Each cell is around between 3 to 4 volts. So that is how the battery pack will get constituted. So the typical specifications for any 48 volt BMS, so you specify the voltage range, because this decides your hardware, how many cells you can connect, how many CMUs you can connect to your BMS, then what kind of chemistries it will support. So this is usually from a hardware perspective, because the voltage ranges will vary and you may need different sensing, different hardware sometimes for the measurement. Then number of cells per board. So because there are standard ASICs to do the cell monitoring. So based on the number of cells, you decide your hardware. Temperature detection usually is not a problem. It is a standard thing. Cell voltage detection range, as I told you, it varies from cell voltage will vary from 3 to 4 volts or maximum 5 volt. Current will again depends on the application. So, but certainly for more than 100 amperes is what you need for a 48 volt. Cell monitoring accuracy. I think these are very important, as I told you, for all of your algorithm. Cell voltage and current monitoring. Then so I think there are so many other parameters which will we will look into. I think we are 15-20 minutes left, so I will just walk through quickly. Then in terms of cell balancing, as I mentioned, it is usually a passive cell balancing. Cell balancing current becomes sometimes a factor, but you don't need that much of balancing current now because of the good quality cells. And SOC estimation, yeah, everyone would expect it to be very good, but even 95% is a very good achievement, I would say, and it is not that easy. So between 90 to 95% is what you can get. So the last topic which I just want to cover is on the high voltage BMS. So when we talk about high voltage BMS for an EV, and at least what I am referring currently is the 500 to 800 volt range BMS. As sir mentioned, there are solutions also with a lower voltage. So the battery management unit, usually there is only one battery management unit, and the CMUs can vary. There are several CMUs which you will have in a battery pack. Then IP level again now becomes critical when it comes to high voltage BMS. So you may go up to IP55 or even higher based on the application. Then this I think the FUSA, I don't know how many of you have know it, but this is a very this is functional safety requirements, and this is as per the ISO 26262 standard. And now this becomes a very critical factor when we talk about the high voltage BMS. So different components in the BMS, they have to qualify different ASIL levels. So the BMS overall has to be ASIL C compliant. So this ASIL stands for Automotive Safety Integrity Level. So this is for safety critical applications. So I have, I think in the next slide, maybe an overview of that. So there are different ASIL A, B, C, D grades. And so this comes under the critical as a requirement, BMS. So now I would only highlight, I think we have talked about different factors, but when it comes to a high voltage BMS, there are several features which becomes now very important. So if you see diagnostics is becomes a very important. So contactor diagnostics, so pre-charge and the main contactor. So there is a diagnostics for I mean your contactor may get what you call melted. It can get melt and then it can get stuck. So you need a diagnostics for each and every contactor within the thing. So there is a contactor diagnosis for DC charge, for AC charge. There is a fuse diagnostics. So you see the whole range of diagnostics that you need for a high voltage. Then and because it is an SLC compliant, it becomes really very important aspect of the BMS. So you see, then I mean, algorithm is a secondary when it comes to high voltage BMS, because you first have to ensure that the operation is within the safety limits. So then when you talk about the communication, you can also see that now you have a redundant communication. So you have a vehicle CAN, you have a diagnostic CAN, sometimes you have a separate CAN network for your current sensing, and over and above that you might have the CAN for sensing crash. Like if the crash event happens, right, then you need a really quick communication to actually disengage your entire battery pack. So communication then now again becomes a very important aspect within the BMS. And then the thermal management is again a very important aspect because now you have a bigger battery pack and then you have maybe a water cooled battery pack, and so thermal management again takes quite an important role there. Yeah, so that's I think these are the really and as I told you, that's the reason the algorithms takes little backseat, and you have to first ensure the safety of the solution. Yeah, so I was talking about ASIL. So when we talk about high voltage BMS, I think understanding the ASIL requirements becomes very important. And these are, I mean, usually in the academics, it is not really that much discussed or focused, but I think this is a very vital aspect of the design. And I have just wanted to show you the comparison. There are different safety in different domains. There are different terminologies what you use, and as I told you, in automotive there are these 5 ratings: ASIL A, B, C, D, and QM. And I think some of you might have heard, because of all these lockdown and COVID and all that, the medical equipments have come into focus, and you see there is a class A, B, C. So if you think about a ventilator, it becomes a class B device, just to give you an example. So this becomes, the ASIL becomes really critical for any high voltage thing. So I think I would skip this. These are high voltage sensing, and there are certain specific requirements when it comes to an high voltage BMS for the sensing. So if you see the sampling rate, accuracy, the current which it can handle, all of these becomes important for a high voltage current sensing. Okay, so this is my last slide. I want to leave all of you with a thought about what is going to happen in BMS now. So what I see from an industry perspective, the BMS getting a cloud connectivity is a very interesting topic which is currently being discussed. So what it means for you and me, if you take in India, the 2 and 3 wheeler segment is getting electrified at a very fast rate. And if you have maybe a Bluetooth in your BMS, then your mobile phone can tell you whether your 2-wheeler battery is charged, not charged, whether it is okay, and that becomes a very interesting use case for the users. And once you have the cloud connectivity, then you can run algorithms on the cloud. You can update your battery algorithm with parameters which are calculated on the cloud. So your whole perspective about the algorithm changes. So once you move from an embedded system to a cloud, you have far more flexibility for the algorithms. Then intelligent charger control. The charging, as I discussed earlier, also has big impact on the health of the battery. And now with a BMS having some intelligent features, you can really have an intelligent charging control through BMS. Then the battery authentication and theft prevention. This is again a topic which is now a lot of customers, they want that they don't want the user to change the battery and put something else into their vehicle, because it is so vital for a EV, and so they want to protect it. So it is, I think it is very similar to the technology what we already have in a phone, right? So if your phone get lost, you can just completely disable it. And the same thing the OEMs want to do with the battery pack. So somebody steals your battery and you just disable it. But this will all happen if the battery is connected, right? So these are how these features will come in. And then the AI is making a lot of inroads in the algorithm. Once we start getting a lot of data from the battery, we in India, there is a big experiment going on for battery swapping technology. Now this makes the whole BMS take a different role, or rather a enhanced role. So now the BMS which is there in the swappable battery will have all these features, and then it has also a very good management. It will have a good algorithm. So all those will be possible once we look into these kind of swapping applications. Yeah, I think with this, this was my last slide. So now we have a couple of minutes, and if everyone is okay, we can extend it for 5-10 minutes, and I can take some questions from you.
Is there any query from participant side?
Or any feedback or anything you want to share?
It was really a nice experience, because the last part of your presentation, we were not aware of it.
Okay.
So,
yeah. No. So
yeah.
Because I wanted to give you the perspective from really coming from how BMS is getting evolved. I think for the academic perspective, it is very important to keep that in mind, keep that in the background, because then your research, then your algorithm development, then your all those things can align with it then very well.
Yes, sir.
So I know it may be, as I told you, it was not really a technical in-depth into the aspect, but these are the surrounding aspects which are very important in automotive.
Yeah, for us also it's an opening of certain areas, because many times we skip these things. We do not even bother about those safety things.
Correct, safety things, and even the algorithm development I have seen, if it is a completely academic thing, then the algorithm needs really a lot of other consideration when it comes to practical usage of the algorithm. So
yes,
you
sir.
have to think whether you can embed it, whether you can execute it on the onboard device. So there are many such aspects which are important.
So it was really nice, sir. Thank you very much for your time, your precious time, because I know from industry side you have a lot of commitment, lot of things. So you have spared this much time, and we are very much thankful to you, all from our management side. And
thank you.
Hope that I'll discuss with you. We'll continue the association.
So as I told you, I have been very closely involved with the academics, and I always love to interact with them, and we really drive several programs. So it will be good to interact with the participants, and if you have any other things, please write back to me.
Sure.